Hey, welcome everyone. Hi, it's great to see so many smiling faces on video. Thanks everybody for joining us today for the February PFCC Partners Community of Practice Workshop. We are very excited to be joined by our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Work Group, or actually the Patient Family Advisor Network Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Work Group, and really thrilled to promote the work that they've already done and share DEI through their eyes. My name is Lindsay Galley. I'm the Director of Education for PFCC Partners. And before we get to our content today, I just wanted to quickly introduce our organization for anyone who is new to us. So PFCC Partners is a patient-driven organization. Each one of us serve in the role of patient family partners, anywhere from our local hospitals to partnerships across the country. And we utilize our experiences as patients and families to support the partnership of healthcare providers and other patients and families, because we know that the best possible health outcomes happen there. And diversity, equity, and inclusion are key drivers across all of our programs. We have a small but mighty mission to reinvent the healthcare industry so that hospitals, healthcare organizations, and all stakeholders continuously partner with empowered patients and families as a resource in the co-design of programs, policies, and improvement activities. And the way we work, like I had described, is really using our own personal experiences as patient family partners, along with the large community of patient family partners that we get to learn from through the Patient Family Advisor Network. And through that, we develop PFCC structures and cultures within healthcare organizations, and also support patients and families to become effective and impactful partners in healthcare that all go into all of those healthcare organizations that we get to partner with as well. So I've said the PFA network a few times as we've gotten started. The PFA network is a community of really highly engaged patients and families, or patient family advisors or partners, that grows each of its members' competencies in partnering to co-design effective healthcare systems, processes, and policies all across the country. Part of that network is the formation of different topical work groups. And that is what we're talking about today, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Work Group that has really helped to inform the way PFCC Partners work, and how, or where diversity, equity, and inclusion fits into the Patient Family Advisor Network as well. So that's really what we're talking about today. I'm excited to be able to introduce all of our members and hear, your questions about DEI and help to fill in some of those gaps. As a reminder, we will be presenting for the next 45 minutes or so. So if any questions come up throughout our session, please feel free to put those in the chat and we will monitor those throughout. And we have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of our session for additional questions if you would like to come off mute and speak up at that time. All right, so at this point, I would like to introduce Libby Hoy, who is founder and CEO of PFCC Partners. Is going to first talk a little bit about, the journey that we have been on, and how we've been able to really build this table of partnership with the DEI work group members. So Libby.
Thanks so much, Lindsay, and welcome everybody to this really important topic for our community of practice today. As Lindsay noted, we are a learning community, and just to invite all of you into this conversation. So how we got started. In May of 2020, when the George Floyd murder happened, like a lot of organizations, I think we really felt a need to make a statement in opposition and in support of all Americans who represent the Black and African American communities. And so So I wrote a statement and I thought it was really good. I was really committed in my heart and our organization. We were completely committed to raising and being more diverse, being more inclusive. We were committed to those values, but I lacked understanding. I lacked really genuine understanding. And I had a board member actually very quickly send me an email and said, your statement sounds completely tone deaf. You need to listen before you can talk. And that was, again, it was kind of like, oh, because number one, of course, we didn't want to do any additional harm, but also because, gosh, in my heart, we really felt like we were doing the right thing and being proactive. And so that really started our journey on learning about what does the term diversity really mean? What does the term inclusion mean? We were inclusive. That was part of our core values of the company and has been since we started, since day one. But how did we live that out? And I love this picture. I was walking on the beach with my dog and I met a gentleman who was collecting these shells and unique pieces. And he showed it to me. And I just thought, man, that's what inclusion looks like. It looks like a lot of doors in a lot of different places. And yet we weren't really doing that. We were talking about PFACs and making sure they reflect the diversity of your population, but we weren't really helping on how to get there. We weren't learning from communities about how to get there. And so this really started our journey. And I started by inviting every member of the PFA network who represented the Black and African American communities to join us in a diversity, equity, and inclusion work group. And I got a lot of different responses. I got some who felt that we were only coming to this now, and it was a bit too little too late. Others who felt that it wasn't their job to guide us. Totally understood both of those reactions and completely accepted those as that person's journey and lived experience. And then I had 10 folks who said, yes, we'll join you and in this journey. And I thought that it was a very brave thing to say yes in the moment, but almost 2 years later, now I really see the courage that it took to join us in this effort, because the 2 years haven't been easy at all times, but they have been extraordinarily valuable, I think, to everybody, which is what you'll hear a bit more about today. So once we got started with this DEI work group, we launched an environmental scan and looked for every resource, who was doing work in this area, what did that look like? We looked at historical articles and videos, we looked at documentaries, we collected books and articles, and we put them all together on the PFA forum so that others could also learn from these materials. So we dove in really deeply with the desire to learn and listen. We started some challenging conversations. The DEI work group members and the PFCC partner staff all took implicit bias tests and talked about those results together. And we also invited 3 DEI work group members to join us for a Brave Space conversation, and that launched our PFCC Partners annual conference in 2021, or I'm sorry, in 2020. And so those were some of the early activities that we invested in, and we'll share in a little bit more about what some of the more specific activities we continued throughout the years and the impact that that's had. But at this point, I think I'd like to call in my friend and colleague, Deneen Green, and hand it over to you for a little food for thought.
Thank you, Libby. Well, welcome everyone, and I hope you are seated at the table and ready and excited to be served. And we have a delightful menu for you today. And it's a start with our food for thought. And so I'll share this little bit. 2 years ago, DEI members declared we would not wait to be invited guests to the healthcare table. Instead, we would create our own roundtable where the narrative of health equity, diversity, and inclusion would be the main course, and we would offer a seat to those who would work together in solidarity and allyship. There's an African proverb that states, "One who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others." Well, today we invite you to the DEI table, offering you food for your soul and a seat amongst friends. In honor of Black History Month, we are sharing the makings of our main entree, a DEI vegetable soup. Before you partake in this feast, here are a few ways you can be a complementing side. Well, some of you might want to be garlic bread. It's got the just right amount of savory, garlicky kick. It's tender on the inside and crunchy on top. You are pragmatic, robust, thoughtful, and ready to work. Or maybe you choose to be a salad. You can be dressed up or dressed down and literally go anywhere, from community grassroots to broadening better healthcare views in the boardroom. You are the perfect complement to small and large healthcare organizations. Or perhaps you'd like to be a batch of biscuits, right up there at the top of the cozy comfort foods. Careful to be gentle in your approach, but once opened up, all your layers of connections come together in a symphony of partnership. But there's a warning. Any biscuits coming to the DEI table that are bland, dry, and hard are subject to be discarded. Now, we have some people who might be literally like popovers. You'll come to the table, but we're asking that you be filled with custard or with substance, because we know some popovers, when you open them, they're full of hot air, and we don't need those at our DEI table. Or perhaps you'd like to be a part of the cheese boards, full of textures and sizes and colors. Well, no worries. We like aged cheese, but we don't like processed cheese. Or perhaps you'd like to be a garnish or a topping. Well, our soup is great on its own, and you can instantly enhance the DEI masterpiece with a little embellishment by adding extra flavor, crunch, or eye appeal, like a dollop of sour cream, mixed herbs, or a drizzle of olive oil, always elevating the dish without taking over. My personal favorite complementing dish really isn't a dish, it's a beverage. Simple as water, cool as iced tea, or warm like hot toddies. You could have wine or mocktails and cocktails. All are good on their own, never having to be mixed into the soup. Only available to wash down the contents and refresh the palate. The beverage is never overlooked and a necessary component to the DEI meal. And if you're wondering about the dessert, well, it hasn't come to the DEI table just yet. We're working towards serving something sweet and unexpected, but only when the job of eradicating health inequities is finally done. Well, now that we've covered all of the complementing sides, let's learn a little bit about the veggies our DEI members chose. Each member was asked to identify their favorite vegetable and describe how it best matches their personality. Why don't we have Ayadola go first? Ayadola, I pass it over to you.
Thank you, Deneen. What a beautiful introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayadola Anishe, and my vegetable of choice is a sweet potato. Many of you know sweet potatoes are root vegetables. They're found in the ground. And I, myself, feel like I am grounded. I plant myself in the things that I'm passionate about, and I get nourishment and fulfillment from the sun, who are my friends and family, water, which is my work to ensure equity and engagement, and soil, my creativity and self-expression. Sweet potatoes are nutritious. They have lots of beta carotene, vitamin E, and C, iron, potassium, and B6. Well, I like to be a source of nutrients to those who are around me. I like to provide care, support, and ensure that the people that I know, as well as those that I do not know, have what they need to be whole, well, and thrive. I also seek to nourish the health system. From the time I was a child, I wanted to be a doctor. And while I went not a completely different route, but I went the public health route, I see myself now in the work that I do as a physician to the health system. Our system is sick and it needs care. And so I hope to be able to make that system better. Sweet potatoes are versatile. You can bake them, roast them, fry them, grill them. You can make it into a savory dish or a sweet dish. And for me, that translates to being both analytical, but also really creative. And I want to be able to use both of those sides of me to be able to be at the cause of change rather than being at the effect of change. And then sweet potatoes like to grow in 75-degree warm weather. And they can grow in many farming conditions, and they actually have very few natural enemies. And so for me, I do well in various settings. I strive for peace and harmony and progress through radical collaboration with patient and community engagement and equity being both essential and necessary. I am a sweet potato.
Ooh, we love sweet potatoes. And if you're a sweet potato, put that in the chat. We'd like to know about it. Do you mind if we pass the baton over to Patrick?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My favorite vegetable is a Brussels sprout. And the reason I like Brussels sprouts is that they're not the most popular vegetables. As a matter of fact, a 2008 poll showed that people hated Brussels sprouts. And the reason that they hated Brussels sprouts is because Brussels sprouts stink.
Yeah.
But yet and still, when expert culinary chefs took and did a lot of research and found out that Brussels sprouts were very medicinal, according to Chinese physicians. They have a lot of vitamin C and vitamin K and soluble fibers that can actually help prevent chronic health diseases such as cancers, bone cancer, as well as stomach cancer. Brussels sprouts are very odd because they look like little small cabbages, but they're not in the cabbage family because cabbages grow on the ground. Brussels sprouts grow on fibrous stalks. So it grows in clusters, which means that Brussels sprouts are very good teammates. They believe in bringing folks together, and they're very complementary to other dishes. They can either be an appetizer, if you prepare it right. They can be an entree, a main course, if you prepare it right. They can even be a side dish or either a snack. But the best thing that I like about Brussels sprouts is that it's built for endurance, and so am I. In my lifetime, I've dealt with adversity. People didn't like me just because of the color of my skin. People didn't like how I talk because I live in the southeastern quadrant of the country and maybe I talk with a twang or something like that. People didn't really care for me, but yet and still, once they did their research and they saw that they really couldn't get rid of me, then they were able to understand that I'm built for adversity. And with a Brussels sprout, sometimes you got to have the real hard conversations. Why do you stink? Maybe I'm cooking you wrong. Let me add you with some other complementary things like maybe onions or maybe some bacon. Let me just go ahead and loosen you up, not boil you, but maybe just cut you in half, wash you, and just douse you with a lot of olive oil and just roast you. And voila, all of a sudden, just like the Brussels sprout, I become a person that you can tolerate. And along with Brussels sprouts, it improves your digestive health, which means that if we sat and really had the hard conversations, what I share with you can really go down easy. So this is why I'm a Brussels sprout, and that's my vegetable, and that's what I'm sticking to. So thank you.
I think I'm going to fall in love with Brussels sprouts now. Stephen Hoy, what's your vegetable?
Man, I had a lot of similarities with sweet potatoes myself, but I'm going to go with edamame. It is one of my favorites. I'm a rather simple person. I may come out of the ground a little ugly, a little hard to swallow maybe at first, but I do really well in boiling water and just a little bit of salt on. And I think that pretty well summarizes me.
Wow, thank you. What about Laura? Laura, are you there? Can you tell us your veggie?
Yes, I can. I chose an onion. Onions are unassuming and versatile and have layers, and they work really well in the background of a dish. And I think onions really bring a dish together. Sometimes that's just all you need is to add onion into a soup or something, and it'll kind of bring every ingredient together. And I feel like any good dish starts with butter and onion and garlic, so it's a good base.
Lindsay? Thank you, Laura. Lindsay, what's your vegetable?
Thanks, Janine. I am a pumpkin, not only because my mom called me a pumpkin growing up, but because pumpkins can adapt to any occasion, no matter who or what is working with them. They can be sweet desserts, a part of savory soups like you've been talking about, Janine, or even add enzymes when you put them onto your skin. So really whatever you need, a pumpkin can fill that role. And if you haven't had a pumpkin roll, they're delicious as well. Pumpkins, they grow on a vine, and with the right sunlight, water, and nutrients, they just continue to expand and grow. And like me, that's what I love to do. I really love self-improvement. I love to learn and just continue to grow myself personally. I do know that pumpkins aren't for everyone. I know there's kind of a vast majority who love the pumpkin spice lattes when they come out in the fall, and the others who are completely against it, and that's okay. They can also be scary during certain seasons, but once you warm up to a pumpkin, there's no telling what you can create.
Oh, Libby, what's your vegetable?
Wow, first of all, I'm completely intimidated to go after all of you because you're so incredibly thoughtful about this. And that's been the joy of working with all of you over the last couple of years. My vegetable is an artichoke. And artichokes are, for those of you who may not be familiar, and that's part of it, artichokes are not familiar or well known to everyone. And they grow in the desert with very little water and very little attention. They tend to sprout off in a different direction. And I think that has always been my, my unique perspective on the world, and what really drove me into patient and family engagement overall and sustains me in this work of building equity. Once you get the artichoke and you put it in a pot and you steam it, it manages that heat well, and in fact softens in the heat and opens up into a really soft and sweet sort of vegetable, if you will. And I think that kind of goes along with my ability, or not my ability, but my intense interest in other people's story and in other people's journey. And the fact that every person who I encounter and I hear their story and I hear their journey, that impacts me, and that I soak that up. And by soaking that up, I become more open, more knowledgeable. So I'm an artichoke.
Aw, love artichokes. Well, I haven't shared mine, so I'll do that now. I am okra. I chose that as my superfood. Whether it's stewed, fried, or baked, okra has grown to become a cornerstone of Southern American cooking. This green vegetable has a deep history, originating from Africa. During the 18th century, okra made its way to the Americas through slave ships. Historically, okra has been used as a soup thickener, a coffee substitute, and material for rope making. Okra and I share a love for innovation and creativity. It is rich in vitamins A and C, as well as antioxidants, and we both help reduce the risk of serious health conditions like cancer, diabetes, stroke, and heart disease. Love it or hate it, okra can get slimy, just like dealing with opposition to equitable healthcare reform. Okra is an excellent natural laxative, and I too work hard to flush out the bad health policies and poor outcomes. Like okra, I have deep Southern ties, and my last name is the color green. I am versatile and adapt to many environments, constantly changing my composition, but never my integrity. I am okra. By the way, Oprah likes okra too, so that's a plus. So I'm going to close our food for thought with one last proverb, and this is an African proverb too. If you watch your pot, your food will not burn. If you watch your pot, your food will not burn. As you seek to create your own DEI menu, be sure to nurture community relations, explore outside the norms of healthcare, add some diverse conversations, include cultural flavor, and keep a watchful eye on the amount of heat that you add to your dish. Remembering, good chefs don't ever serve burned food. So that's our food for thought. And thank you for allowing us to share this little journey with you. Libby, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks so much, Deneen, for that creative exercise. And it's such a fantastic analogy for the work that we've done together and bringing together these unique perspectives, unique flavors, unique histories and cultures, and to make this amazing meal together and build that table together. So thank you very much. So now I'm going to turn to each of our DEI members who are with us to share a little bit more about their journey with us as an organization. So we've got just 2 questions that I'd love for you each to respond to, and I'll start with Ayadola. What have you learned with us over these last couple of years? And then, what do you hope for us to accomplish in the future together?
Everyone keeps on starting with me. Oh.
I know you're just a great starter.
I will say that in working with this group, one of the I think biggest epiphanies that I had was that I had been wearing a mask, right? And I know that we're all in the COVID space, and so we've gotten used to wearing our masks. But even before COVID, from the time that as I was growing up, as I became a professional, as I was even sitting amongst people as we were preparing for the Brave Space conversation, I realized that I had on a mask and I wasn't actually showing up as my true, honest, and authentic self because I believed that the world didn't want to see that, and I obliged. And so being a part of this group helped me, number one, to see that and to start to think about how I want to show up. I've been doing work in health equity for gosh, 18, 20 years. And around the time of George Floyd's murder, the conversation started to shift and change. We could talk about structural racism. I mean, the number of times that I heard structural racism mentioned was just, I heard it mentioned more in probably the 6 months after George Floyd's murder compared to the, 18 years before that. That meant for me that it was really time to strip away at the mask that I was wearing. And I think this DE&I group really allowed me to be me and to share that as we talked about some of the challenging things that were taking place nationally, but also some of the changes that we wanted to see within PFCC partners and the network. The other element that I learned from this group, and Libby, you pointed at this, this work is not for the faint of heart. I know that there are people out there who kind of want to know what's going on, who want to be a part of this. But if you are not kind of going through and experiencing conflict, and conflict is not a bad word. Conflict is not, it's not a 4-letter word in reality and intimate. If you can't have deep, thoughtful discussions that change you, if you are not at a point where you are seeking to understand but would rather be understood, then working in this space isn't for you. So I know that through our work, we've had a lot of deep conversations. There have been conflict that has moved us forward, but I think consistently there has been an understanding of wanting to seek clarity on who we are and why, and to move forward. So those are some of the things that I've learned from this group. And then lastly, what I appreciate about this group is there's a thoughtfulness that even as we are seeking to create change, that we don't want to do harm. It is very easy to have good intentions and to still do harm. And so as we're thinking about the way forward, it's really important to not just have good intentions, but to be very strategic and thoughtful about how to move forward, when to move forward. And I appreciate this group for that. What I believe is in the future for this work group that I'd like to see is for us to go deeper within ourselves, whether it's training, whether, I know many of us are reading and always trying to think about ways that we can improve our understanding and knowledge. We might be of color and Black, but that doesn't mean that we know everything. And so we're on a journey and a path to grow. I'd like to see that dispersed to others in the network. I'd like to see that dispersed around the way that work is done with clinicians and with health systems, so that this notion of health equity and anti-racism is actually embedded into everything that we do. I've learned that racism actually strips away who we are. As I mentioned in the beginning, I was hiding myself. And if racism strips away who I am, it also has the ability to strip away who every single one of us on this line are. It removes your history, it removes your ancestry. You are no longer a product of the past generations that have their legacy has allowed you to be here. That doesn't matter. Racism strips away all of that. And in order for us to do anti-racist work, we actually have to tap into what makes us different and to go deeper. And so I see that for the future of DE&I. I see us really engaging and making sure that this work is being pushed out and serving as a ripple effect to take us further. I'll stop there because I could keep on going. But and I also want to congratulate Libby for this hard decision to move forward in this way. And it's been an honor to serve alongside you and the rest of the DE and I group. And those on this line will see, if you haven't already, that this is really just an amazing group of people to be working with.
Thank you so much, Ayadola. And I just couldn't agree more with everything that you've said. I think well, I'll get to my learnings a little bit later, but the idea that we could have conflict and talk through that, that was quite a journey for us. So thank you. Patrick, how about you? What have you learned together with us, and where do you hope to see us go?
You know, Libby, being a part of this group has been one of the best staples to my week. Because before, I used to do this work on my own. And I did it because I didn't think folks would really understand. Not just talking about trying to be equal, but just looking at the humanity of an individual that may not look like you, because this is what this fight boils down to. Especially when we know that race is a social construct, yet and still, because we know that, we don't change our behavior, we don't change our character. And just like Idola said, this work isn't for the faint of heart. It takes a special individual to want to jump into this. It takes a person who doesn't mind showing her scars, understanding that it's nothing to be embarrassed by. It just shows that the wounds that you had are healed and that you are overcomer. And that's what you are, Libby. You know, you shouldn't have never gave me the mic so I could talk about you. Because I'm going to say what everybody needs to hear. It takes a very strong person to reach out after a traumatic event such as the death of George Floyd, and to look within your organization and see the need for change and want to correct the ship. And you reached out and we accepted the mantle and we went to work. And it wasn't easy. It was very difficult because there were moments where there were indifferences, yet and still, there was still an opportunity to learn, and we learned together. This wasn't about Black and white. This was about humanity. This is about a particular group of people that historically has been oppressed, has been silenced, has been rejected. And why? All because of the pigmentation of their skin. And yet and still, you felt it in your heart that everybody needed a seat at the table. And you gave us that table. And you allowed us to come to that table. And from that table, we built that table up. So it's not just your table, but you extended it, and it's our table. And we can sit there at that table, and we created not just a brave space, but a motivational space, an empowering space where we can sit and we can talk about some of the toughest things. And you know that everybody at that table has a pure heart, that nothing that's said is out of malice, but out of compassion, just for us to grow. So that's what I've gotten out of it, and where I'm looking to see us go is to really create change in the community, to kind of take people from seeing indifferences to similarities. And that's going to be the toughest work ahead, for folks to actually be able to look in the mirror and say that the only thing that separates me from any other race or ethnicity is just my exterior. That if you peel my layers back, I still bleed red blood, I still have a heart, kidneys, organs, stuff like that, just like every other ethnic group. So I believe it begins individually before it can come together corporately. But that day that it does come together corporately and organizationally, it'll be a beautiful thing where the entire choir of PFCC is singing the same tune. And that is going to be the greatest impact that healthcare will ever see. So thank you, Libby.
Thank you, Patrick. You're so eloquent, and you speak to the need to establish a safe space together to have disagreements and to accept those and learn from them and allow that to propel us forward. So thank you very much. Deneen.
Oh, wow. I'm soaking all of this in, and we often have these similar, talks when we meet. But when I think about what I've learned, I go back to a place where I was searching for something myself. As a patient advocate, as a family member, serving a child that has chronic healthcare needs, I kept seeing all of the faces and voices of the people who are in my community who have been so vulnerable in healthcare and who are continued to ask to be in a vulnerable space where there is no diversity, very little equity, and lack of inclusion is all around them. And I didn't know how to give them voice. And so I tried to speak for all of them. And that's really hard to kind of carry a heavy load. So I was searching for a group of people who looked like me, who had similar ideas, who thought like me, even if the adversities weren't quite the same. And so I went to the bus stop, and the bus stop was at PFA Network. And at the bus, I'll use analogies and stories. There was a sign to come on and get your ticket for the DEI bus ride cross country. And I was so excited to jump on this bus with the 10 founding members and to get on that bus and have people sit next to me who we all looked in the same direction. We all had so much in common, and that same fight and drive was there, and it's still there. But on that journey, some of the people had to get off the bus. They waited until it was time for them to have their stop, and they got off because maybe they didn't like the scenery so much. Maybe they couldn't switch seats, or maybe the particular task they had at that time was done. But I didn't feel like my task was done. And when I looked out the window and it was raining on my side of the bus, I would just ask to switch over on the other side so that I could see the sunshine from the west. And so when the bus would break down, and Libby, you would be at the helm trying to drive the bus, and there'd be Lindsay and Laura and Stephen and everyone pitching in to help on this bus. Even when it broke down, all of us stepped in to fix it, to keep it going. And we could have all decided to get off. We could have all decided that there was no use in pushing the DEI narrative forward, but we didn't give up. And so I've learned to continue to stay on the bus, no matter where we are along this journey, that what I'm seeing outside will change. The atmosphere around me will change, that I can still have a great impact with whomever I'm sitting next to. Or if I get off on this stop, however I leave the individuals there, I've imparted some of the wisdom that I've learned along the way, that I can share a piece of me. And moving forward, I want to be more of a health activist, because I learned in this work that we can't really change policy if we can't have people who are healthy to step up and speak out and go to the polls. That health activism goes hand in hand even with politics, even when we don't like to talk about it. There's politics in healthcare. And for so long, Black people who are sick, who don't have quality food, who have poor housing, who lack in education, who don't have substantial income to make a living. How do they have a voice? How can they have a voice? So being in this DEI group has taught me to change the narrative for myself, to change the lenses of which I'm looking out of, and to have more of an activist role. And so I'm hoping in the future that some of the waves that we start to put out, that we can ride those waves a little further, and that we'll hit the banks on somebody else's shore and have a great impact. So that's where I am. And I'm trying not to get emotional and choked up about it, because this work is heavy. And there are many a nights where after our meetings, those comments and our challenges, they don't leave me. Maybe they leave some of you who are looking in, but I get to walk around and see those challenges every day, because I'm the person in the skin that goes into some of these healthcare organizations, and I don't see myself. I'm not always treated fairly. And I have a hard time sometimes even using my own voice. So anyway, I just like to leave that there.
Thank you so much, Deneen. It's been a powerful journey for all of us, and I don't know that any of us walk away from our meetings without holding on to some of those, and really, for me, trying to apply what I learn in my everyday life. So I thank you for being vulnerable and joining that. So what has all this work had, what kind of an impact has it had on PFCC Partners? And what are the specific kind of activities that we've been engaged in over the last 2 years, as we heard from not only the DEI work group, but our more diversified boards as well, our advisory boards. And really the work that we've been doing is about shifting the power dynamics in the engagement opportunity strategy that we move forward. So as a convener, as a connector for patient family perspectives into health system development, health system design and evaluation, we're really intentionally moving forward voices that haven't been heard in those tables. That also means supporting those voices and providing a lot of engagement opportunities, a lot of capacity building opportunities, and a lot of guidance and hand-holding it when it's necessary to really empower people to have a seat at that table. We facilitate meetings a little bit differently, with a keen eye towards, are we making space for every person and family member to be, family caregiver to be heard? And is that space really authentic, and does it influence the decisions that are made at that table? And being very observant of that, and creating activities where that shift can begin to take place. We really have kind of looked through all of our work and across all of our contracts to how do we increase diversity through inclusive activities to build equity. For us, that's kind of our mantra. In each of the LA County Department of Health Services work that we're doing, or the Sign-Assure H-Quick work, do we have enough inclusive activities? How do we build from the traditional PFAC and move into communities and create multiple opportunities for people to inform healthcare decision-making? And so being creative about listening sessions, about trusted community partners, and building relationships with trusted community partners so that we can engage voices who have been underrepresented in this work in the past. I think we've just really come to not only have we learned the fact that we cannot begin to build an equitable health system without engaging the people that have been impacted by the disparities. Not only have we learned that, but now we really understand that. And we understand, we're learning, we don't understand yet, but we're still learning about how do we build those activities an infrastructure that's going to engage, again, the voices of the people who are negatively impacted by the disparities of care that we see. I think overall, and Lindsay said this really well earlier, this work group has accelerated the things that we always wanted to do. So I told you inclusion was always a value, diversity, appreciation for diversity, always a value, but we weren't really acting on that. And so I think this DEI work group has really accelerated our path to bringing in and building those bridges for more underrepresented populations to be part of this journey with us. So yeah, that sense of urgency, I think, is a really important impact to the organization. So I think with our last couple of minutes, we'd also like to share a little bit about what our team has learned through this journey. I think I have learned, and I'm going to be a little bit quick because I want all of our team to have a moment to share as well. I think what I've learned is that DEI work is more than words. So you can string together all of the new language around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's so much more than words. And as someone who fumbles my words on a regular basis, that was really important to me. I could still do this work. I could still be part of this work, even though I didn't have the right words all the time. So DEI is more than words. That there will be critics, that there will be critics of how we're approaching this. Should we have started with a DEI work group of only Black and African Americans? For us, that was the right decision because we felt that if we addressed these concerns, we would be lifting all underrepresented and underserved populations. So there will be critics, push on. That everything's a token effort, right? Everything's a token effort when you start. And as a white woman of privilege in this world, it was a token effort. I started in with the best of intentions, but not with enough understanding. The funny thing is, 2 years later, you can't call it token anymore, right? So everything's token when you start. Keep going, keep asking questions, keep learning. I think that what I've learned from this group most of all is to give grace and to understand that everybody comes to whatever table we build together with their own experience and through that lens, and to give that grace. But I think the biggest gift that I've gotten from this group is to receive grace. And that has been a very big challenge for me. But this group consistently helps me to understand that I do have a contribution to be made in building an equitable health system, and that giving ourselves grace and the space to come into this work is probably the biggest gift that I've gotten from this group. So in terms of where we want to go, this isn't a journey. This is just the way we do the work we're doing. Where we're going, spreading across every contract, spreading our DEI efforts and being inclusive of the PFA network members to build an entire network who's committed and has the knowledge, the resources, and the mentors to move forward in their DEI journey. So, Stephen, how about you? What did you learn and what do you hope to accomplish?
That's so much good there.
Mm.
Yeah, what have I learned? The top thing you were just getting to for me. I know I'm simple and sometimes don't say much, but I promise I'm doing a lot of thinking always. That's my thing. I'm a thinker, and it can make me quiet at times, but I had a lot of thinking going on about my role, my impact. Is there a role? Can I help? Is there a role for me, Stephen, to play? I had, metaphorically, definitely 1 foot off that bus, Deneen, onto a sailboat somewhere in the middle of the ocean. And this group has given me the lesson and the answer to that question. With all confidence, all humility, I think I do have a role to play here. And what is that role? What do I hope to accomplish in the future with that? I want to move everything that our legacy medical care and healthcare system has into historically underrepresented spaces, places, and people. There is so much there, and activate the healing that I know our healers in society want to play a role in as well. I want to see those resources and that knowledge mobilized into communities, utilizing the most powerful force I know, reinforced by Deneen, the power of stories and the power of community engagement.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Laura, how about you? Oh, Lindsay's next, sorry.
I'll be quick because I know
I was
we're
going to
running-
end with you.
Yeah. No, all good. Yeah, I know we're running out of time, so I'll be really quick. And I don't think I can fit into even an hour how much I have learned by being a part of this DEI work group. And I've always considered myself a pretty empathetic person, but the individuals in this work group really help to, pull the curtain back with their honesty and transparency and realness. And I'm forever grateful for that. Being part of this, like Libby said, not journey, but just the way that we work now, and being part of this work group has really helped me understand the gravity and the need for real diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in healthcare, but in our country and our world overall. And I hope to continue to learn more, to continue to have, more honest conversations, to hear more stories, because they are so powerful. And then using what I learned to, support the establishment and sustainment of truly diverse and inclusive patient-family partnership programs that focus on building equity for their communities through partnerships in healthcare.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And Laura, you've been at every meeting. What'd you learn?
Yes. Well, I grew up in a not diverse place. I grew up in a small rural town that really we were taught to not see color, and that way everyone will be treated equally if we didn't see that. And as I got older and moved around, diversified the people around me, I learned that that is the most important thing that we need, is to see our differences and celebrate our differences, to recognize what needs to be done around us. And in this group, that's just solidified that with me. And it's especially in the healthcare system, learning all of that. I've learned that staying silent is unacceptable. And I've learned how to have those conversations with my family and my friends around me who don't necessarily see the problem, and just having those uncomfortable conversations and learning that it's okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, it's necessary to be uncomfortable to learn and grow. I am naturally a pretty quiet person, so I have been in the background of this work group, just listening and absorbing and everything, observing everything around me and learning all kinds about microaggressions and implicit bias. And I now have the tools to recognize those within myself and within people around me, and have the tools to catch those. So yeah, in terms of the future, I agree with everyone ahead of me. And just adding on, I hope that we can help people realize that it's not, we always say it's a marathon and not a sprint. And it's the small steps that we need to take in the beginning to really move this work forward.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I'm afraid that we have run out of time for question and answers, but I would encourage anybody who's been listening in, if you have additional questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we can follow up with those after the workshop. But I just want to thank all of our presenters today, and the amazing camaraderie and partnership that we have cultivated over the last 2 years is just bound to do have an exponentially positive effect on our organization and the health ecosystem moving forward. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. And Lindsay, I don't know if you have any other announcements.
No, just thank you again to our presenters and to the DEI work group for not just the presentation today, but the past couple of years of partnership together, and to everything that we look forward to. I just had a quick plug for the next workshop in March. We'll be talking about patient safety, looking at layers of protection for patient safety with our partner Kim Workmeister at Cynosure Health. So you'll definitely receive more information about that. And this workshop recording will be available on our website under archived workshops, and we'll be sure to share that out if you would like to pass this along to anyone else who might need to hear a little more. And it sounds like we need a part 2, so maybe we'll all come back in a few months, and I think Linda had a good idea to apply what we learned and get to your questions and answers. So yeah, with that, thank you everyone for your participation, all of the kind and encouraging and thought-provoking comments in the chat, and the presentation overall. Thank you so much to the DI work group for the work that you put into this, and looking forward to continuing this partnership moving forward. So thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Happy Friday.